Listen, my channel is not known for budget knives. However, I am working on changing that. I'm trying to feature more and more budget knives, and it's ones like this that kind of keep that fire going because I really like this one. It is not a new knife. It's been out for a number of years, but one of the benefits of this particular knife right now is you can pick these up for cheap. This is the Djinn titanium folder from Damned Designs, OEM'd by Kubi. But what is going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. Did you think I was going to get away without doing my intro? No frickin' way. Thank you for all your support, everybody that watches my channel, everybody that likes, comments, subscribes, all of that stuff. And if you're not doing those things, please do. It really helps me out. Spread the word. Let's turn this into an awesome knife community channel where we can all hang out, share pictures, and talk about things and do all that cool stuff, because that's what this is about. It's not about knives, it's about the people that own them, right? This is an excuse for us to interact. At least from my perspective, right? I don't need all these knives. I need people. I need friendships. I need community. That's what I need, and that's why I joined this hobby. So let's get into this right now after that huge intro. So, oh man, where to begin with this guy? Let me get a few things out of the way before I start. So I have modified this knife a little bit. Originally, this came with, and you can check my unboxing video, I think it was teal hardware. It kind of had like almost like a Batman and Joker type thing going on. Teal hardware, teal pocket clip, backspacer, pivot, all that stuff. It was a little much for me because this blue, this anodization is electric. I don't know how they got such a beautiful blue coloration on this titanium. I mean, maybe it's not even anodization. I don't know. It looks really good. If you've been in the knife game for any amount of time, blue is a tricky color to get. A lot of the times it looks great until you get some oil on it and it kind of disappears. This looks like it might be a hard anodization. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not going to dive into that too much more because I am not a knife maker, so I don't know all the possibilities. I just know you don't usually see this kind of blue on titanium. I've never really seen it. It looks thicker than your normal titanium. It looks like what you would see on like a Microtech aluminum anodization, like a hard type 3 anodization on aluminum, but I don't think you can do that on titanium, so not sure what's going on there. But long story short, with this really bright blue and then the teal, it was just, a little too much for me. So I broke this down. I took all of the pieces here and I soaked them in some acid. The acid I used was actually some stuff I bought for a car I used to own that had little bits of, it was a white car, and it had little bits of iron embedded in the paint, which is very common during the car manufacturing process. Little pieces of iron can get embedded in the paint, and if you have like a white car, that iron will eventually rust, and then that's why you get those little like rust dribbles. So this acid, you can spray it on your car, and it will dissolve that that iron. I think that's how it works. Anyways, regardless, it's just like just regular acid in there. You can use any kind of acid, and it just dissolves and removes all that anodization really quickly. And fairly simply. So that's what I did on this. Other than that, though, I have not modified this knife at all, other than that coloration on the hardware there. So let's dive into it now that I have blabbed on for 3.5 minutes of more or less intro. Let's get some specs out of the way. You're looking at about 3¼ inch blade. Overall length is about 7.5 inches. And, all jokes aside, I've really kind of changed my perspective on small knives. This would have been a knife that I would have completely avoided years ago, along with something like this RCK9 and along with something like my beloved JB Stout Snappy Boy. I absolutely love this size of knife now. I don't know why I did not give it the attention it deserves for years and years. Because, big knives are impressive, but there's something about being able to kind of manipulate a smaller knife like this, as well as how well they carry. I don't know. It's something about it. Something about it is really cool. And this is no different. This thing is a boss. And it also helps that it's fairly wide. So it's not like a skinny little knife. It's just on the shorter side. Weight on this guy is 4.8 8 ounces. So not bad, not bad at all. Let's do some size comparisons before I get too far off on a tangent here. Here it is next to a PM2. You can see a little bit shorter than a PM2, but nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy at all. Here it is next to a Chubb, a Chavez Chubb, just for fun. Here it is, if we're talking blingy colors, here it is next to a Poikilo Anolis, because I have it here handy. And then here is a comparison I've never done before. I don't know why. Here it is next to a Strider SMF, just in case you care to see that particular comparison there. And I think that's okay. Why not? We'll do a Scapegoat just because I have it here. Chavez Scapegoat. There it is next to the Scapegoat. You can see the handle length is very, very similar. Overall length is a little bit shorter. So when you're talking about, okay, let me do this proper. Let's start at the beginning here. So we have a nice S35VN steel blade. I mentioned that this was OEM by Kubi. They're good stuff. They know what they're doing. Really high flat grind on here. Reasonably thin behind the edge. Nice acid stonewash blade that looks really, really good. You've got a Poon up on the top. I love my Poons. I am a Poon fan. Throw a Poon on it and I will probably pick it up, honestly. There's a little secret for you manufacturers out there. If you're trying to get more of my money, which please don't, throw a Poon on it and I'll probably get it. Nice opening hole here. It's hard to do opening holes that don't seem derivative of other models. And that is one thing that I really appreciate about this is it doesn't, I don't think like, oh, this looks like this or this looks like that. I mean, you can always draw some comparisons, right? Because we're dealing with a blade and a handle and it has to fold into the handle. So there's limitations on designs you can do. But it's really, in my opinion, a very unique design. Unless there's something I'm missing where this looks very, very similar. Like the closest thing that kind of like strikes me is maybe the Oz Roosevelt, but that's a far cry from what I'm seeing here. So I like the originality of the designs coming from Damn Designs. I think they're really, really cool. They might be a little out there for some people, but I'm hoping to kind of change your mind in terms of utility on this because this thing is a very usable blade. Like I mentioned, it's kind of that perfect EDC, right? It's thick enough behind the edge that it's not going to chip or break on you. It's not heavily going into the, super slicer, but it's not thick and bulky by any means. This thing cuts like a dream. I've been carrying it. I've been using it. Because it's such a high grind with this wide blade, it cuts very, very well, but you still have a nice robust tip. Lots of details. You got chamfering inside the holes here up on that Poon. You've got really good gear jimping up on the top here that like it grips you in, but then you've got this Poon ledge. So there's a new term, Poon ledge. So it works very, very well. We got the logo right there, Damn Designs with the horns. Very, very cool. Opening hole functions superbly, and I just realized that I lied to you. I lied to all of you when I said I have not modified this knife. I did do something else. I relieved some of the lock bar tension because right out of the box, the detent was a little stiff, and not for thumb or reverse flicking. It was only stiff for this front flipper here with kind of like how I just did right there. With me adding pressure on this lock bar, because of my stupid long fingers, it did make it difficult for me to use the front flipper there. And on the left-hand side, because I'm not putting any pressure on it, I had no issues. But when I would do it on this side, even if I really tried to get my fingers off of it, trying to get up in this position, I can't help but put my fingers on it. I just can't not do it. If I'm doing a thumb flick, it's a little bit easier to not put pressure. Maybe not. So I did relieve some of this tension here. I took it down when I took out all of the hardware to remove the anodization. And I just bent this lock bar out like a tinge, like 0.5 millimeter, ever so slightly. And that reduced it enough that no issue. And as you can see, I cannot flick this thing open if I tried. The blade's not super heavy, and so the detent doesn't need to be that strong to hold it in. Now, yeah, we'll talk about cons in a minute. There's minor things that I would like to see on this knife, although they're never that simple. So let's keep going on. We've got this anodization on the titanium handles. I love this oversized chamfer here. I like this custom pivot, and then it also has a dual purpose of locking it in, right? So it's not free spinning. Very cool design. all incorporated. No need for a D-ring because the shape of the pivot acts as like the D flat side anyways, so that when you're undoing this thing, you can take it out. The only negative of my de-anodization is it did leave this weird ring on here for some reason. So that wasn't there when it was anodized, but for some reason now that I've removed the anodization, it's got that. So the reason I point that out is if that's bugging you and you don't plan to remove the anodization, you're not going to see that. That's not indicative of the quality. Just has something to do with the way the acid interacted with it. And as you can see in certain light, it kind of disappears and then you can see it. I think the anodization was a little bit thicker on a spot, and so the acid kind of just didn't react uniformly on that side of the pivot. Framelock, we've got a lock bar insert that is screwed from the inside, which is very nice. Gives you a nice clean look here. 3D milled titanium pocket clip. It is completely out of the way of this relief cut here, so it's not going to snag on your pants. It works very, very well. Nice backspacer here. We have one screw holding it together. However, we do have pins inside to prevent, lateral kind of shifting of the knife. And so the screw is simply there to hold these two halves together. It's not bearing any side-to-side force. So I know that's a point of contention people have when they're looking at knives and they're trying to see how robust it could be. Maybe they see one screw down here and they think, oh, that's not enough strength for a knife. But if it has pins running through in here, that's all you really need, because a screw should never account for sheer force of the scale sliding back and forth. Having 3 screws to try to stabilize a knife that doesn't have any internal pins, not the best idea. I would take one external screw and internal pins any day of the week in terms of strength, and it gives you a cleaner design and it's easier to take apart. All around, I think it's just a positive, a net positive. This thing the action on this is amazing. It is super drop shutty, no side to side, no up and down. It is rock solid and so much fun to flick and fidget with if you're not screwing it up because you get stage fright in front of the camera and start squeezing too hard, can't open it up. As far as ergonomics go, it is ergonomic, although it is a little odd. Like, if it takes a second to get used to it because it tapers down like this and your pinky is kind of hanging on this ledge right here. If you're used to knives where you just have a full consistent grip, it might feel a little odd at first because it almost feels like if I squeeze it, it's going to like shoot out the front because of how it tapers. But once you get used to knives that are set up like this, another example is the Poikilo tuna, right? Very similar to this, how it kind of tapers down. It feels very, very good in hand. However, I will say, I will knock it a couple points on the ergonomics just because of that, because I think even when you get used to it, it's not always perfect. So here's where my hands are fitting. I get a full 3-finger grip, and then my pinky is kind of on this ledge right here. Not uncomfortable, right? No hot spots, nothing like that. I could hold this thing all day and it feels really, really good. Another good thing about this kind of taper is when you're talking about thrusting, if you're putting force this way, you're way less likely to slide up. In fact, with the thumb in the poon and your hands on here, the chances of you sliding up onto this blade are next to zero with how this is designed. Going this way, not as much, but when the hell is there force going this way? I can't think of a time where that would be the case. Another thing, and this is kind of a personal preference, I would almost like to see a version of this knife without this. That is kind of obnoxious looking. I feel like for how big this guy is, it doesn't function well enough to justify how much of this is sticking out. Because if you see this thing, at least me, I thought, oh man, this is going to be a front flipper's delight. Like, this is going to front flip like crazy. And it does front flip pretty good, but not anything above a normal front flipper. And so for having this giant mohawk sticking out of the top there, I don't think you're getting enough benefit from that to justify how much is out there. And you could definitely, because you're really just kind of putting pressure right here to open this up. So this whole thing could technically move down a lot and you would still get the same front flipping performance. Now, the problem though is it kind of feeds into the design. So part of the reason it sticks up so high as you can see, you'd have to modify this design, because if it only went up to here, you'd have this weird ledge thing going on, because this jimping comes all the way down the back. You'd have to change the way this handle looks in order to change that front flipper there. So it's not as simple as just shrink this down. You'd have to make other changes, but it would be cool if you could figure out a way to basically do this same design either without the front flipper or a much more inconspicuous front flipper. But other than that, that's like my only gripe on this. When we're talking about cost, I don't know what these retailed for when they first came out. It's kind of hard to go back in time and sleuth what, because I think these have been out for like 3 years. This is not a new knife. But based on what I'm seeing, I think these were like $130 to $140 when they first came out a few years ago. Now you can pick these up for like $114 before coupons. Like if you go to Chicago Knife Works, they were doing a 15% off. And so I think I paid, I don't know, whatever the math is, less than $100 or just around $100. And for S35VN and a titanium Framelock, $100 all day. And then when you combine it with the fact that I actually really like this knife, like it's not just good for the money. I mean, it's a banger of a knife. It is a solid contender in knifeology here. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'd pay $200 for this. That is such a loaded, hard thing to say, to pretend you would pay more money for a knife. But it's definitely worth more than $100 in my opinion, because it's really, really good. And so I would, even though I'm late to the game on this, I feel like I'm striking while the iron's hot, because these are on sale if you can find them. Not everybody has these right now because they're running out of stock, I assume. But go to Chicago Knife Works, look it up. They've also got other versions of the titanium, just like this, with the different blade shape. It's essentially the same knife, just with like a tanto. I think it's called the Oni. You can pick that one up too. Just awesome bangers. I have no association or affiliation with Damn Designs. I bought this with my own money from Chicago Knife Works. I also don't have any affiliation with them. I would love one. If you guys are watching, hook me up. But I just wanted to get some budgety type knives, and I always liked how Damn Designs looks a little out there, but not too crazy. So I'm like, man, I got to try these out, and I scored big on this one. This one's awesome. All right, guys, comment down below. What do you think of the Djinn? Oh, by the way, this also comes in like an even cheaper version with lesser steel and G10 handles. This is the premium version in the titanium. But you can, if you like this design and size, and you're like, I don't want to spend $100, for like $50, you can get the G10 version. So comment down below. What do you think of the Djinn from Damn Designs? I think it's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to you guys later.